Can the science of genomics not only re-elect Obama, but provide a mandate? It's unusual for me to start out a 15 minutes of fact interview with the need to provide a warning label. You're about to be, but don't be afraid, subjected to the careful, reasoned thinking of a scientist as to how his web-based solution can not only ensure Barack Obama's re-election, but that Mr. Obama will also receive a mandate on top of that. A mandate, if my math is correct, that would require 60% of the vote, or better. This seems unlikely at this point in my awareness, but not in Michael's opinion. And he has the credentials to support his claims. A Ph.D. in Biophysics from UC Berkeley, many years spent understanding the molecular and genetic mechanisms of genomes. This required him in turn to learn software programming, web development, to handle the huge amount of information that's generated in that study. And there's no greater amount of information than in the barrage of propaganda being generated in this 2012 campaign. Is it too late to make sense of it all and to cast the vote for the best man as opposed to the best ideologic, or maybe in the case of one candidate, ideologic choice? So we're going to learn this today from Michael, now that we've satisfied my predilection. We have him on the phone from his home in New York City. Welcome to the show today, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Happy to have you with us. Now, before we get into the important questions, because I'm really curious as to how you feel we can create a mandate, much less get President Obama reelected, let's talk a bit about your credentials and your experience early on with the Occupy Wall Street movement and any effect that may have had on your thinking.
Well, I am generally involved in, as volunteer projects, I create projects using the same web technology I use for genomics to help human crisis projects like the Haiti earthquake project or Occupy Wall Street, where basically there's people in need. And what I'm trying to do generally is manage large amounts of information, get that information to the people who need it, and usually by some sort of internet-based website or cell phone application that is basically modern web technology.
Isn't that something you were attempting to do with Occupy's technology group?
Yes, I was on the TechOps group there, and I wasn't actually involved in the development of the website for Occupy. I was in a project called FGA, that was Federated General Assembly, that was developing basically a same type of web-based internet system for exchanging information between different general assemblies in different cities. That's what the Federated GA was, and it never really came into fruition because the camps were unoccupied and never reoccupied, so that project didn't really pan out.
Well, apparently you've come out of it well, not only from a point of view of understanding and being a part of a social movement that wants to see positive change, but to begin to focus your understanding of creating a knowledge base for the 2012 campaign onto making people aware of the huge lies and deceptions that have been presented as facts. So, again, I make it very clear what my predilection is, my orientation. I have no reason to offer an excuse for that. It's the way I feel, and I'm trying to find people like you who can help me understand better. Am I right? Am I wrong? Should I be believing these lies? And exactly how can you, with this knowledge base, help somebody like me?
Okay, well, what I'm doing now is I've shifted, as the rest of the Occupy movement has, to the 99% movement, and I'm trying to provide essentially critical information for the 99% of the national public who are about to vote for either Romney or Obama. And it seemed pretty clear Obama had a very good lead up until the debates, and Romney started lying just outrageously in the debates and completely changing his positions. It was very difficult for Obama to rebut him. It's very difficult to know what he would do if he was elected. But I think that there's actually still a very real possibility, although the window is obviously closing quickly, to let people really change their minds radically and in large numbers about whether they favor Romney and Obama. For example, there's been a very large amount of information that's documented that the Republicans are engaged in voter suppression and trying to block the turnout by Democratic, often black or Latino groups. This is in the news all the time, but most of the public doesn't know about that. If they were aware of that, I think they would be so outraged and angry that they would switch over. If they were thinking about Romney, they would switch in large numbers to Obama.
Well, if you want to speak about anger, think of the sabotage created in Congress. Does this address that as well?
Yes, that's another major key point that I've documented in this website, and that's even more remarkable. I mean, it turns out that we've learned over the last year that there was a meeting by a group of Republicans, both senators and from the House of Representatives, on the very first day, the night before Obama's first day, in Washington, where Newt Gingrich and Frank Luntz and Dan Cantor, Paul Ryan, and others were involved in a plan to block Obama's administration. And it has been documented so well that although originally this just seemed to be sort of a deliberate obstruction, I think you could actually call it a planned sabotage. And people are starting to call it out as sabotage now. And that's what I think that President Obama should do, is just mention this very directly in his campaigns, or get it on the national news so that people know about it. Because they're blaming Obama for not creating jobs, but the Republicans in Congress have done everything they could to keep him from having a successful job creation program and blocking the economy as well.
Okay, I'll buy that part. I think a lot of our listeners would. But you're one person, and you have a thought or a program that you think is going to make a difference in the fashion that you're describing. How do you hope to accomplish this?
Well, what I've done is I've created what I call an online knowledge base that documents all of this in a very direct and easily accessible way, and lays out the logic and history of what's gone on, and with references to the original information and so forth. And either reporters could, I'm hoping to make contact with national reporters who can report on this website and also fact check it and so forth. And then it will draw attention to people. I think that if, this could be just, a topic of discussion for 2 or 3 days over the next week at a national level, where people see what's going on in terms of voter suppression and deliberate sabotage of Congress, that they would turn away from Romney and also the Republicans in Congress in large numbers. That's where I think the mandate can come from.
Well, if I understand your website properly, you have something that you refer to as being the key facts that you want to make available in a written form online. So give me an example of a couple of these key facts.
Well, we've actually already talked about a couple of them. So I have a page, one specific page called Key Facts for Motivating Voter Turnout and Victory. And it links to 3 separate pages. One is on voter suppression, one is on sabotage of Congress, and one is on one of Romney's most insidious lies, that Obama robbed Medicare to pay for Obamacare. And that's discussed each of those are discussed in some length and documented on the website. And I think people if the national public knew about the information that's in that single web page, they would turn away from Romney and vote for Obama and Democrats in large numbers.
Well, you mentioned in conversation the fact that there's a massive amount of information that flows in a constant multi-channel river of news. That's the norm for everyone these days. That's usually what you call your mainstream media. How do you hope to either combat or influence mainstream media with what you're doing?
Well, you mean like channel news media, or like Facebook, or?
Actually, I'm going to go to social media in a minute, but I'm talking about NBC, I'm talking about CBS, I'm talking about the major channels, Fox, misinformation news, that sort of thing.
Right. Okay, so what I've done is I've created what I would call a custom knowledge base that has a very selected, carefully selected, specific set of information that together provides enough information with enough documentation to convince people for those 3 topics that I'm talking about: voter suppression, sabotage of Congress, and that Romney has lied about Obama robbing Medicare to pay for Obamacare. That actually, I think that any one of those topics would be enough to move people away from Romney and the Republicans in quite large numbers, and hopefully 3 of them together could move large enough numbers to create a mandate for reelect Obama with a 60% or more vote, get rid of enough Republicans in Congress to allow his second term to succeed much better, and that would essentially create a mandate for change.
Well, first thing that's going to happen when people listening to this interview who are not inclined to vote in the direction you're suggesting, they're going to say, who in the hell are you to tell us these sort of things? So we need to understand your credentials in advanced web technologies, your background in science. Where can we find this information? What is that website? And what is this data mashup that you refer to?
Okay. So the easiest way to access this website right now is from my homepage, mcaudy.net, mcaudy.net. And at the bottom of that page, there's a link to Election 2012. That's the website. And that'll take you right to the website. So now I think that in terms of, what credentials do I have about, this information, I based my reporting largely on Bill Clinton's DNC speech, where he actually did a lot of research and he called out all of these things that I'm talking about. Voter suppression, sabotage of Congress, where Mitch McConnell said his goal was to make Obama one-term president. And he also talks deliberately and very specifically about this fact that this lie from Romney that Obama robbed Medicare to pay for Obamacare. So if you want to know what my credentials are, I'm really building on what Bill Clinton did very carefully in preparing and laying out his DNC speech.
Well, you're actually being modest because I know that you've also helped create a custom knowledge base for problem solving, such as the Haiti earthquake, Fukushima nuclear reactor crisis. I mean, this is pretty major data crunching.
Well, that's right. It's not actually so much. It's not massive amounts of data crunching like genomics. It's what I would call a data mashup or knowledge base of very selected things. Actually, when you do genomics like I do, you throw away most of the information and just keep the very small amount that you need. And that's kind of what these websites did. We didn't try to solve the entire Haiti earthquake crisis. We just tried to find people who were in camps who needed food and places who had food and hooked them up together. With Occupy Wall Street, we were doing similar types of things of trying to connect different camps together so they could communicate with each other. And what I'm trying to do right now in this last week is just have these key facts for motivating voter turnout. Just one focused idea with 3 examples that I believe if the news or the Obama campaign would really start directly calling out Republicans for their deliberate sabotage of Congress, for their deliberate acts of voter suppression, and for this lie that they're saying that Obama robbed Medicare to pay for Obamacare, that would be enough. And that's it's really focused. That's all I'm trying to do in this.
Well, you know as well as I do, and probably even more so, that trying to influence the mainstream media from what they're saying and the way that they're saying is rather improbable, but not impossible. So let's talk about the world that I live in, the online social media systems like Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, LinkedIn.
Okay.
How does this relate to the audience there, and how does this audience understand what you're talking about?
Well, I would try to pitch this to the news media and to people in general that this is really the next generation of social media. What is done here is you're taking an entire website and really have it focus on one thing. That's what I mean by custom knowledge base. So now if you just think about that sort of evolution of web media like Facebook and Twitter and so forth. Twitter is just very small messages in the stream of news. It's very difficult to really even have serious communications and exchanges and so forth. It's very powerful for certain things. Facebook, likewise, doesn't really give you much information. You can more or less like things and so forth, but it doesn't really give you a place to really make a major presentation of ideas.
I grant you that.
Tumblr is an advance past Twitter and Facebook, where you've got a blog, but there's it helps you put together a more logical set of images and movies and text. But at the same time, it doesn't really create what I would call a knowledge base. It's an advanced blog, And I would describe this new system, this knowledge-based type of system that I'm using in these projects, is like Tumblr on steroids, where you've got even more ability. You can create data, what are called dashboards or data mashups on a single page and keep that. It's not just a blog flow of information. That's still a river of news. It's hard to follow. But you can have one page, you can have a multi-page website where each page has a very specific purpose and the very specific information needed to address a particular problem or convey certain things. It's a very powerful form for creative expression. I think people are going to be in the future using this type of web-based system to move towards what I would call a knowledge-based economy. People are going to be living online, publishing online, reading things online, and it's really, I think, the opportunity to move beyond a simple Facebook type of functionality where, you're sort of expressing your opinions and advising your friends, what you would recommend to see in movies and books and stuff. But this is really where people can do things in a much more organized and productive way. I think a good way to think about this is to imagine, you probably know that there's some effort to try to get funding for Wikipedia. So imagine that those incredible articles that are available for free, that people have done for free on Wikipedia, suppose they got paid for that. Suppose they got paid to research each one of those articles and provide documentation for it. And not only were they doing that, but they were actually getting paid for it, and it was being reviewed, and it was accurate information. And it's very similar to what goes on in science. I think science is going to end up all being online. Most of it is online now, actually. And I think that there's a possibility to move towards what I would call a knowledge-based economy. And in fact, I'm very interested. One of the things that I was trying to do with the Occupy movement was create what I called an internet homestead project, where everybody in the country, just like Lincoln created the homestead project in the Civil War, if Obama could create an internet homestead project where everybody had a website and a place online where they could build their own stake, their own system of information and so forth, and where people are exchanging information, sharing information, collaborating on things together, just like scientists or academics do in a university department, but online, and developing on resources for online journalism and online research. This is really kind of a micro version of what science funding in NIH and NSF is.
Michael, this is a superb amount of information. You're sending us into not only the immediate future of being able to help determine the election of a president, but the far distant future in which each one of us will be responsible and capable member of society, interconnected in a way different from what we're used to at the moment. So I know that my listener is going to want to stay in touch with you. So for that purpose, I want to thank you very much for your time and attention, as well as thank our listeners for tuning in. But more importantly, not just tuning in, but causing your website to go viral so that more people can get a better understanding as to how, as a population, we can work together to create a popular and powerful mandate for outstanding leaders. So, again, Michael, I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure. And for those of you who want to get in touch with Michael Caud, you can reach him by way of his website, and you'll find that located in my brief introduction to this speech here, this conversation we're having. You can reach him by way of email at mcaudy, C-A-U-D-Y, at gmail.com, on Twitter as mcaudy, M-C-A-U-D-Y, and on LinkedIn under his full name, Michael Caud. So this is Jerry Ashton, thanking you again for listening to 15 Minutes of Fact on WGRNradio.com, and wishing everybody a safe and storm-free life.